Guys, you know that feeling you get in the morning after a big night out? Because our friends at Zbiotics are here to help. Zbiotics, pre-alcohol probiotic drink, is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. Invented by PhD scientists, designed to tackle tough mornings the night after drinking. Here's how this works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct that goes to your gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol creates an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make Zbiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly. Zbiotics pre-alcohol is perfect for those who always have their health in mind and are looking to master the balance of work and play. So I want you to level up your recovery, and I want you to do it today. I'll get you 15% off your first order at checkout. All you got to do is click on the link in the description. Plus, Zbiotics offers a 100% money-back guarantee. If you are not satisfied for any reason, they will refund all of your money, no questions asked. Is Paddy that good, or does Chandler suck? That was the headline. I actually had a hard time just saying that. That pained me to have just said that, because I think that's so rude to Chandler. I will address it, though. I will address it as long as we go into this as men understanding, is Paddy that good? Does Chandler suck? As long as we understand this is an expression to attempt to prove a point. And it's tough language to try to prove a very simple point. Is Paddy that good? Is Paddy as great as we're seeing? Or is he catching some guys at the right time? And it's a tough conversation to have, because you can't have it without accidentally potentially insulting Paddy, who wouldn't deserve it. He's showing up, he's fighting whoever, whenever. They're jacking the rules on him. I mean, not for nothing. That should have been a 3-round fight just for fun. Somebody in the back makes it a 5-round fight, which is absurd. But he's still dealing with it, and he's finding a way to win. Many people, and I'm just going to run you through a timeline, did not believe he beat Gordon. Many people did not believe the version of Bobby Green that he faced was the same version of King Green that other people have faced. And that's the big question with the Chandler fight. Did he look so good that he beat the All-American wrestler Michael Chandler at wrestling, followed by beating him up in MMA? Or is Chandler not as good as perhaps we believe? You see where that gets, you see where I'm saying that can be very hard, but this is still the topic, so let's discuss it. That was an interesting version of Michael Chandler. Michael Chandler is somebody that I look to as he's a real cardio guy. When a fight becomes 5 rounds, that favors Michael Chandler. And Michael Chandler dug every piece of strength that he has amassed in this lifetime, which he's had a very hard life from a physical standpoint. The paths that he have chosen have prepped him for just this kind of moment. And it took every bit of that strength to answer the bell for the second round. That's the truth. And you're not going to be told that. There's not going to be a time that Chandler comes out and does an interview and tells you that. It was so bad and it was so difficult for him to answer the bell for the second round that for a very brief moment, less than a second, but for a very brief moment, I wondered if he was going to. So, how did we get there? How did we have such an exhausted Michael Chandler? And many times in an MMA fight, many times in a wrestling match, which I grew up through, you'll see somebody get tired, you'll have somebody else comment on their cardio and instantly negative things. He was partying, he was playing, he wasn't training right, he wasn't in shape, he didn't work hard enough. As opposed to understanding you should be exhausted. You should be completely exhausted after a round, after 2 rounds, after the contest as a whole. You should barely be able to stand up to conduct your interview. That was the deal. You signed a contract and promised these paying people that you were going to go out and be like 2 trains running into each other. You should have no energy left. But I'm sharing for you this level of exhaustion that Michael Chandler was at after 1 round. is higher than any level of exhaustion I have ever seen Michael Chandler at, and I've seen him after 5 rounds. That's the truth. And it is a fair question of, how did we get here? The problem is that it might not have anything to do with Michael Chandler. Paddy the Baddy may well, and I don't know. I don't know this yet, but I'm looking for it. He may well possess an intangible. Now, an intangible is something that can't be trained, it can't be taught, and in most times it can't even be identified. If you were to go and watch George St. Pierre, and you had a notepad, and you wrote every time George scored an offensive technique, you wrote it down. And you had his whole career, 2002 to 2018, and different weights and world championship, you wrote them all down. When you were done, you would have a list of about 10 things. And of those 10 things, if you'd spent any time in the sport yourself, you would know how to do all 10 of those. And you look at it and you go, well, then why am I not world champion? I don't need to learn any more moves. That guy doesn't use any more moves than I know. And the answer is an intangible. George had a strength. George had a pace. George, while it looked like he was hitting a double leg, was actually hitting 7 and 8 double legs if needed. George, while looking like was pinning an opponent down, he actually was grabbing a wrist, dropping a shoulder, getting knee placement, bothering that opponent the entire time. There was intangibles that you could not just identify. And it is very possible, and I would put it in the category of even likely, if we could speak to some former opponents of Paddy, we would get to the final conclusion that Paddy possesses some intangibles. I think that perhaps that's why Chandler was so exhausted. I think in the very first round, even though Chandler won the round, Paddy had an ability to make Chandler work. Paddy had an ability for Chandler to never feel comfortable. And boy, that's a tiring feeling. When you're out there and there's nowhere for you to get comfortable, you have to find places to rest. Even in a sport like combat, where the number one thing they're trying to do is hurt you as opposed to score points on you, you must find places to get that breath. You must. On the outside chance that you can't or you're not good enough to, the state will do it for you by blowing a whistle and making him give you 60 seconds to get a breath. It is that important. And I'm believing that perhaps Paddy is not giving these guys that opportunity. I believe perhaps Paddy has and possesses intangibles. Because if I was to go back and watch that match for what it was, there was nothing that Paddy did, no matter how much I don't want this to be true. No matter how much I rewind that tape and try to watch that technique over and over to see what Paddy did, there was nothing that Paddy did to put Michael Chandler on the bottom. Michael Chandler chose to go to the bottom. And when you choose to put yourself in a bad position, it is hard for me to explain, for the human mind to make that decision, to work against itself. Only happen. It's fight or flight is very real, though. It's very real. There's reasons you can go and watch online. You can read these things where a police officer finally gets confronted with something, and the police officer takes their own gun and throws it at the guy and turns and runs. Like fight or flight is very, very real. And when Michael Chandler made the decision to put himself in a worse position than the one that he was in, it's simply because the idea, at least, of being in that worse position was going to take up less energy than maintaining the positive position that he was currently in. And I'm wondering how we got to that level of exhaustion. I don't say this to embarrass Michael Chandler. I know that's what happened, because it's happened to me. And that's the secret. We all have the same secret, and that's why we don't call each other out for it. Because down the road, we don't want called out for it ourselves. This was not meant to be a piece on Michael Chandler or the exhaustion. I'm trying to determine why we got to that point. And if it is, in fact, Paddy. Because that is the one common denominator. I can talk about what maybe happened in the Gordon fight, or what maybe happened in the King Green fight, or what I saw happen in the Chandler fight. I can talk about that. But there is one common denominator. And that denominator is named Paddy Pimblett.